All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. This time, we are heading back to the very beginning of One Piece. We're going back to the East Blue to where it all started. We're going to explore those early chapters, what makes those first few chapters so captivating, and maybe even uncover some hidden depths for those even those who've been following the series for a while.
I think it's really interesting how Oda, the creator, uses these early chapters to set the stage. Not just for like the world and the characters, but for those big themes that we see throughout the entire series. It's kind of like a treasure map, subtly pointing to like the deeper meaning of the story.
Okay, so let's kick things off right at the beginning. The execution of Gold Roger, the Pirate King. It's like the big bang of the One Piece universe. What are your thoughts on his final words? You want my treasure? You can have it. I left everything I gathered together in one place. Now you just have to find it. It's more than just a call to adventure, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's like a promise of freedom. It shows the power of dreams. Roger's basically saying, I lived my life how I wanted to, and now it's your turn to do the same. That message, that spirit of self-determination, it really resonates with people, and it gets them to connect with the world of One Piece on a much deeper level.
And then we meet Monkey D. Luffy, our protagonist, with those rubber limbs. He's goofy and a bit reckless, but then you see that moment where he stabs himself under his eye to prove how tough he is. Is that just like reckless bravado, or is there something more to it?
I think it shows just how dedicated and committed Luffy is. It's more than just words. He's not just saying he wants to be the Pirate King.
Yeah.
He's showing that he's willing to go through any pain and sacrifice to reach his goal. That attitude is infectious and makes you want to cheer him on, even if you wouldn't recommend stabbing yourself under the eye.
Yeah, eye injuries are generally frowned upon. Speaking of eye injuries, let's talk about Shanks. He's the one who inspires Luffy's dream, but he also loses his arm, saving Luffy from a Sea King. Is that just a plot device, or is there more to that sacrifice?
I think it symbolizes mentorship and legacy. He loses a part of himself physically, but by doing so, he's giving Luffy something much greater. His spirit, his will, and his belief in the next generation. It's almost like he's saying, I've done all I can, now it's your turn to leave your mark on the world.
It's like passing the torch, but Shanks seems very laid back about the whole thing. Is he really just carefree, or is there some deeper wisdom behind that easygoing attitude?
That's a good question. Maybe true strength isn't just raw power. Maybe it's knowing when to fight and when to just let things go. Shanks, with his mysterious smile, seems to get that on a deeper level. He's not afraid to lose an arm or treasure or even a fight because he knows that some things are more important than material things or winning a fight.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Okay, let's jump into devil fruits. Luffy eats the Gomu Gomu no Mi by accident, which turns him into a rubber man, but it also stops him from being able to swim. That's a big price to pay for a superpower, right?
It's a really clever move by Oda. It brings in the idea of sacrifice and consequences right from the start. Every power has a price, and Luffy's choice shows us just how committed he is to his goal. He's willing to give up something so basic, the ability to swim, to follow his dream. And that makes his journey even more interesting to follow.
It's like he's saying, I'm all in no matter what. So we have Roger's execution setting the stage, Luffy's ambition, Shanks' sacrifice, and devil fruits. Are there any other key things in these early chapters that you think foreshadow how big the world of One Piece is?
Well, the incident with the mountain bandit, Higuma, a lot of people don't think much of it. But it's important because it shows how complicated the world of One Piece is when it comes to morality. Shanks chooses not to fight back against Higuma even when he's being insulted. It challenges our ideas of what a hero is, and it makes you wonder if true strength comes from holding back or fighting back.
I never thought about it that way. It's like Shanks is thinking on a different level. He's not just reacting to what's happening right now. He's playing the long game. And that incident with the bandit is ultimately what leads to him losing his arm, saving Luffy.
That's right. It shows us that choices have consequences, and that sometimes the most selfless actions come at a personal cost. It's a lesson that Luffy, despite being so impulsive, will eventually learn and show throughout his adventure.
Okay, so we have all these foundational elements, and then 10 years later, we see Luffy finally set sail. He's all grown up, he takes down a sea monster, and you get the feeling that the real adventure is about to begin. But before we go there, let's talk about Luffy's encounter with Alvida and Kobe. It seems like a simple little side story, but does it hint at something bigger?
Yes, it does. On the surface, it's a classic hero saving someone in trouble. But it brings in the ideas of power and freedom, which are so important in One Piece. Alvida is like a symbol of tyranny. She abuses her power and she keeps everyone around her down. Kobe, who's this timid cabin boy, represents that fear and helplessness that comes from being controlled by someone like Alvida.
And Luffy, with his natural sense of justice, sees this and he can't just ignore it. He steps in and defeats Alvida and frees Kobe, which is like a symbol of breaking free from oppression.
And what's really interesting is that Luffy doesn't just free Kobe physically, he also frees him mentally. He inspires Kobe to chase his dream of becoming a Marine, even though it seems impossible. And that theme of inspiring others to follow their dreams, even if they seem out of reach, is something we see again and again in One Piece.
Luffy's like a catalyst. He helps people discover the potential they have inside themselves. So we have Luffy's first act of freeing someone else, which sets the stage for his role as a champion of freedom. But it also starts this interesting dynamic between Luffy and Kobe. They're on different paths, but they both want justice.
It's a relationship that will keep changing in surprising ways as the story goes on. But for now, it highlights the idea that even people on opposite sides of the law can find common ground. They can believe in fairness and want to make the world a better place.
And all of this happens before Luffy even reaches the Grand Line. It's amazing how much Oda packs into those first few chapters. It's not just setting things up, it's like a declaration of what's to come, a promise of this huge adventure.
It's the calm before the storm. The East Blue arc might feel a bit contained, but it's like a miniature version of the themes and conflicts that define One Piece. It reminds us that every journey, no matter how big, starts with just one step.
And in Luffy's case, that first step includes punching a tyrannical pirate captain and inspiring a shy cabin boy to join the Marines. That's not your typical way to start a pirate adventure.
That's our Luffy. And it sets the tone for what will become one of the most unpredictable, heartwarming, and thought-provoking adventures you'll find in manga. But before we dive into the chaos of the Grand Line, we need to meet another important character, someone who will become a key part of Luffy's crew. We've seen Luffy take down Alvida and free Kobe, but his next target is someone with a very different reputation. Roller Noah Zoro, the pirate hunter. What do you think about Luffy wanting to recruit someone known for hunting pirates like him?
Yeah, it seems kind of strange at first. Wouldn't a pirate hunter be the last person you'd want on your pirate crew? But like you said, this is Luffy we're talking about. He doesn't always think conventionally. What's your take on this weird choice?
I think it shows that Luffy can see beyond labels. He sees Zoro's strength and his determination, which are qualities he admires even in someone he's fighting against. But it's not just about that. Remember, Zoro's being held captive by the Marines. They're going to execute him, which is completely unfair. Luffy sees that injustice, and he feels like he has to do something, even if it means saving someone who could become his rival later on.
So it's not just about putting together a powerful crew, it's about challenging those ideas of good and evil, right? Luffy doesn't just accept things as they are, he questions authority, especially when it's being abused. And that sense of fighting for what's right, even if it means going against the rules, is a big theme throughout One Piece.
Absolutely. It's something a lot of us can relate to as listeners, too. We've all been in situations where it's hard to tell what's right and wrong, or where people in power misuse their authority. Luffy's actions, his natural instinct to go against injustice, it speaks to that desire for a world that's more fair, a world where strength is used to protect people, not to hurt them.
So Luffy sets out to free Zoro, and things get pretty crazy. I mean, those marine bullets just bounce right off him. It's so funny and badass at the same time. But it also makes you wonder, if Luffy is this strong already, how much stronger will he get?
That's what's so great about how Oda tells the story. He shows us glimpses of what Luffy can do, those moments of strength and resilience. But he always leaves us wanting more. He hints at how much Luffy will grow in the future, knowing that the journey is just as important as the destination. And as listeners, we're hooked. We're waiting to see what Luffy's next level of power will be like, the next gear, so to speak.
He's always pushing the boundaries, breaking through those limits. But this rescue mission isn't just about brute force. Luffy's also using his smarts. He even manipulates Helmeppo, the captain's son, to get what he wants. Is that just Luffy being mischievous, or is there a deeper strategy there?
I think it shows how resourceful Luffy is. He's not just a fighter. He's a strategist, even if he's not doing things the usual way. He uses whatever he can find, even his opponent's weaknesses, to achieve his goals. Yeah. And while his methods might be a little unorthodox, they're always driven by a strong sense of justice and the desire to protect those who can't protect themselves.
It's like he's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. He's thinking ahead, seeing the bigger picture, and he's not afraid to bend the rules a little to do what's right. But in the middle of all this chaos, we get a glimpse into Zoro's past. We see how he wants to become the world's greatest swordsman. It's a goal that comes from a tragic event, and it's fueled by this incredible determination. What do you think makes Zoro's backstory so compelling?
It makes him more human. We don't just see him as this scary swordsman. We see him as a kid who lost his best friend and promised to keep her memory alive. It adds depth to his character. It makes us understand his struggles and want him to succeed. And it also subtly sets up that rivalry and eventually the deep respect that will grow between him and Luffy. Two guys with big dreams pushing each other to become the best versions of themselves.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin. They each represent a different part of what it means to be a real leader. And that dynamic, that back and forth between them will be a big part of what makes the Straw Hat crew so special. But before they can even think about sailing off together, there's this huge fight between Zoro and the Marines. What do you think is most memorable about that fight?
It really shows off Zoro's skills and how determined he is. We see how precise his three-sword style is and the power behind every move. But it's more than just fighting skill. Zoro could have easily run away, but he chooses to face Captain Morgan, that corrupt Marine officer, even if it means risking his own freedom. It's a strong statement about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it seems impossible.
It's like he's saying, I won't let your labels or your corrupt system define me. I'm going to make my own path based on my own code of honor. And that sense of integrity, that unwillingness to compromise his principles is what makes Zoro such a great character. And then there's Kobe, who, even though he's terrified, finds the courage to stand up to Morgan, too. He says he wants to become a Marine. What does that tell us about Luffy's influence?
It shows how Luffy can inspire people to see the potential they have within themselves. He doesn't just fight for his own freedom, he fights for everyone's freedom. He empowers them to break free from their own limits, both mentally and physically. And that's something we see a lot in One Piece. The idea that true leadership isn't just about being strong, it's about inspiring others to be their best.
So Zoro officially joins the crew, but it's clear that he's not going to be Luffy's follower. He's got his own goals, his own code, and he makes that very clear. How do you think their relationship will change as the story goes on?
I think it's going to be really interesting. They're both strong-willed people, driven by their dreams, but they also respect each other's abilities and dedication. It's not a boss and worker relationship. It's more like a partnership, a brotherhood that grows through shared battles and respect. And that feeling of camaraderie, that loyalty to each other, will be really important as they face the challenges ahead.
And there are definitely a lot of challenges waiting for them. I mean, they're pirates, for goodness sake. But there's one big problem. Neither Luffy nor Zoro knows how to navigate.
Which brings us to our next important character, Nami. Remember that tough thief we talked about earlier? The one who stole Boogie's treasure? And more importantly, his map to the Grand Line. Well, her path is about to cross with Luffy and Zoro's, and it's going to change everything.
Yeah, that's a game changer. But Nami isn't exactly excited about teaming up with pirates. She's got her own plans, her own reasons for wanting to reach the Grand Line, and they don't really match up with what Luffy wants. What do you think makes her drawn to them, even though she's hesitant at first?
It's a mix of practicality and maybe a little bit of a desire for something more, even if she doesn't realize it. She needs their strength, their fighting ability to reach her own goals. But she's also drawn to their optimism, their sense of adventure. It's like a part of her deep down, beneath her cynicism and distrust, sees something she connects with in their crazy pursuit of dreams.
It's almost like they represent a kind of freedom that she's always wanted but never let herself have. And that conflict inside her between her practical side and her yearning for something more is what makes Nami such a complex and relatable character. But before we get too deep into Nami's character and how her relationship with the crew develops, we need to address the elephant in the room, or should I say the clown, Buggy.
Buggy. He's one of those early villains who perfectly captures that unique mix of humor, action, and ridiculous power that you find in the One Piece world. He's flamboyant, over the top, and surprisingly dangerous because of his devil fruit power. He ate the chop fruit, which means he can split his body into parts and control them separately. It's a strange and kind of scary power, and it leads to some really memorable fights.
It's like watching a cartoon come to life. You never know what crazy thing he's going to do next. But what makes his fight with Luffy so important? Is it just a fun, action-packed detour, or is there something more going on?
Yeah, it's more than just a random pirate fight on the surface. You've got those devil fruit powers clashing, the spectacle of Luffy's rubber powers against Buggy's ability to split his body apart. It's classic One Piece, mixing humor and action in a way that just grabs your attention.
And you can't forget that personal connection there. Buggy hates Shanks and that straw hat that Luffy wears. It's like waving a red flag right in front of him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He sees Luffy as an extension of Shanks, like someone he can finally take all his anger out on.
And Luffy being Luffy doesn't back down, especially when Buggy disrespects the straw hat. That felt like a real turning point in the fight.
It's symbolic, right? That hat represents Luffy's bond with Shanks, his dream of becoming the Pirate King. So when Buggy spits on it, it's like a direct attack on everything Luffy believes in, who he is as a pirate.
So it's personal for Luffy, too, even if he doesn't fully understand the history between Buggy and Shanks. But it's not just about feelings. We also see how Luffy fights. What did you notice?
He's really observant and resourceful. He's not just throwing punches randomly. Remember when he figures out that Buggy's feet are his weakness? That's pure Luffy finding a creative solution in all the chaos.
And the tickling, never underestimate the power of tickling in a One Piece fight, but it's not all silly tactics. There's some real strategy there.
Exactly. It shows how differently Luffy approaches fighting. He's not stuck with tradition or rules. He uses his surroundings, his opponent's weaknesses, even his own strange abilities to win. It's unpredictable and entertaining, and it works surprisingly well.
Talking about unconventional, Zoro's got his hands full with Kabaji Buggy's first mate. That clash of sword-fighting styles was intense.
Visually amazing, too. Kabaji, with his acrobatics and tricks, represents a more traditional, almost like a performance style of sword fighting. But Zoro's style is all about power, precision, and this almost zen-like focus.
And when he cuts himself to make the fight fair, talk about dedication.
It shows just how committed he is to his code of honor. He refuses to make excuses or take advantage of someone's weakness. He wants a fair fight, even if it means pushing himself to his limits.
And what about Nami? She's not just sitting around watching. She's got her own plan going on.
Nami's playing the long game. She's using the fight as a distraction to steal Buggy's treasure, and that crucial map to the Grand Line. It reminds us that she's not fully committed to Luffy and Zoro's goals, yet she has different priorities.
Which makes her decision to help Zoro even more important. She could have just taken the treasure and run, but something stops her.
It shows that her loyalties are changing. She's starting to care about these two reckless pirates, even if she won't admit it yet. That conflict within her between wanting to be safe and this growing feeling of friendship is what makes her character so interesting.
So Luffy sends Buggy flying grain, Zoro defeats Kabaji, and Nami escapes with the treasure victory for the good guys, right?
Not so fast. The townspeople understandably aren't happy about all the destruction from the fight, and they're not letting Luffy and Zoro get away that easily.
Which leads to one of the funniest chase scenes in One Piece. Luffy carrying a wounded Zoro, dodging angry villagers trying to reach their boat. It's pure chaos. But even in all that craziness, there's a touching moment that shows a lot about who Luffy is.
You mean Chow Chow the dog, right? He loses his home, protecting Luffy's treasure from the mob, and Luffy risks getting caught to help him. It's a small act, but it speaks volumes about his compassion.
It always gets me right in the heart, Luffy. This seemingly careless pirate shows incredible kindness and loyalty, even to an animal he just met. It's a reminder that beneath that silly exterior, there's a really big heart.
And it foreshadows his future role as a protector, a leader who inspires fierce loyalty in those around him.
Even Nami, who's all about practicality and self-interest, is clearly touched by what Luffy does. It's another step in her transformation, planting the seeds for the loyalty and affection she'll eventually have for the crew.
Absolutely. It's a small but significant moment that highlights the transformative power of Luffy's selflessness.
Yeah.
He doesn't just fight for his own dreams, he fights for what's right. And by doing so, inspires others to do the same.
And as they sail away with Nami sporting a brand new hat, you can't help but feel like you've witnessed the start of something special. It's not just a crew. It's the beginning of a family, a group of misfits bound by their adventures, and a growing sense of loyalty.
These first few chapters of One Piece are more than just an introduction. They contain everything that makes this series so captivating. The humor, the action, the complex characters, and the themes of friendship, loyalty, and chasing your dreams.
And as we leave the East Blue and head for the Grand Line, we feel that excitement, knowing that this is just the start of an incredible journey filled with endless possibilities.
So as you keep exploring the world of One Piece, remember these early adventures. They show us the power of stories, the magic of believing in something bigger than yourself, and the appeal of a rubber pirate with a heart of gold.
And maybe ask yourself, what would your devil fruit power be? What dreams would you chase? What adventures would you go on if you had the power to do the impossible?
Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and remember there's a little bit of Luffy in all of us.